Well, many thanks, Jeff, for deigning to join me this early in the morning. What time is it over there with you?
Oh, it's the crack of 9 a.m., Paul.
Yeah,
It's really not too much of a burden. I do have my coffee here, and I really like to thank you for your invite. Since the passing of our good friend, the dude, I really feel like you are the elder statesman here in the man community. And every time I'm invited on your show, I feel like I've really made it in the community. So thank you for that, and I really appreciate the fact that you put that background, because that's a very familiar background for those of us who've been around for a while. Yeah. And we miss him greatly.
We do. Do you know what? To begin with. When we first lost him, I had mixed feelings. It was of such huge sadness, and it was almost like annoyance and irritation. It was like, why did you have to go? It was just, it was, just now it's just a case of miss him, but he's always here. He'll always be, somebody that I don't know of anybody, apart from the odd guilt, I don't know of anybody that would have a bad word to say about him, because he was just this sort of infectious character, just this really nice bloke, very humble. I didn't realise just how humble he was until I met him, and it was just a really, really good guy to spend time with.
I wish I could have met him in person. There's barely a topic that you can come across that he didn't have at least some knowledge of. He was certainly an advocate, a very strong advocate. And in my mind, he got it. He got the things that you needed to get. Not just about the case, but sort of the principles of the wrong. I mean, he was a strong advocate about the control question and things like that. We don't hear that. He was really the last advocate of the control question. Nobody's talking about that anymore.
I suppose it's the fact that it's one example that particularly Tom Fassbender, and maybe I got it right the first time. Tom Fassbender and then Judge Hamilton, that they actually quote, and you just realise the whole twisting, sort of almost like a politician twisting the whole narrative there. It's just a case of we just have to sort of keep going. He did get to present that T-shirt to Steve Drizzen at Melbourne, and I tell you, you couldn't shut him up for life and the money after that. It was just constant going on about how good that was, and talking about how he met, obviously Laura Nyrider and David Rudolph. I mean, I've just started watching the new series of The Staircase.
Oh yeah.
And I love at the start when it's mentioned David Rudolph. Oh, you only hire him when you're guilty, because he's the kind of lawyer that could even get the guilty person off. So I'm hoping, because I've read David Rudolph's book American Injustice, which was really, really good. But yeah, having met David Rudolph in person, chatting with him for about 25 minutes in Amsterdam when Jerry was busy signing the books was an absolute pleasure, to chat with somebody who I didn't realise, quite who he was till you've actually read the book. Well, I mean, I've seen the documentary, and obviously the one that sticks in everybody's mind is he's trying to put a PowerPoint presentation together and completely loses it with the guy that's in charge of the slides. But in his book, it's interesting. He doesn't talk about The Staircase other than Dwayne Deaver, the blood spatter expert. Right. That's the only one he talks about. And yet when he does his presentations, he does that bit of video with a guy called Sami Shabani.
Oh,
have you ever had the privilege of seeing that?
I have not. No.
This is an expert who was called in as an expert in the Staircase, and David Rudolph actually did a bit of background check on this guy, and he was from the Asian community, but he was British, and he's gone over to America touting himself as an expert. And in one case, it was actually in Wisconsin where this guy was found guilty to begin with of murdering his wife for actually drowning her in a toilet.
Oh my God! What a terrible thing.
Yeah. So this Sami Shabani apparently spent one afternoon as an expert with volunteers, seeing if he could drown them in toilets. And the whole text of it, you've even got Mike Peterson sat there as David Rudolph completely takes the mick out of this Sami Shabani, and even Mike Peterson, he's in a serious situation, but he's struggling to keep a straight face. He has to keep looking away because he doesn't want the camera to see that he's laughing about it. Oh, it's brilliant fellow, David Rudolph. And as I say, the book is excellent. Now, so we had a little discussion just a few minutes ago, and I really wanted to ask you about the, what your thoughts are on the latest sort of. I don't know if it's a setback or not. I've got my own thoughts on it, but obviously I can fully understand how some people are very disappointed in the latest. It was like a newscast where they were talking about the efforts to get clemency for Brendan Dassey and how it seems as if Tony Evers at the moment is definitely saying no way. So I just wondered if you'd had a few thoughts on that from your own background.
Yeah, I do. And I think it's a setback. A lot of people had a lot of hope for Tony Evers. The person who took over from Paul Walker was not going to hear anything about Brendan Dassey for sure. So a lot of people had a lot of hope because I think because of his party affiliation, and you tend to get more sympathy from the left than from the right, despite the fact that President Trump actually commuted the sentences of more people than any president since then. But that being said, he also had Evers. Had a background of an educator. And so we really felt, I think that I felt anyway, and the people that that I hang around with, maybe he'll understand, what happened to this learning disabled 16-year-old who got pulled out of school, who was they fired 4 times more words at him than he was able to parrot back, and basically could have got him to confess to the Lindbergh kidnapping had they kept them there long enough. And we felt that he would kind of understand, but I think what was you said, Paul? I think he said that he was afraid of the perception of being soft on crime. So that he's obviously politically motivated, and really, I think it's demonstrable that it happens to no matter what side of the aisle that you seem to support. It seems to happen that once you sort of get close to power, and all of a sudden you have to become a tool of the far wing of the party. And let's look what happened in Wisconsin under his watch. I'm going to point right to Kenosha. Kenosha burned, black businesses burned. People's lives were disrupted. How come? Because he refused help from the federal government of calling in the National Guard when people were in riotous mode. Can you imagine if that was happening outside your house? I I'd consider that. That's like dystopian. What happened in Kenosha. And in my mind, it all happened because he refused the help from the federal government, and it was really because it was who he was going to have to ask for the help from. Luna.
It was actually Jock. It was actually Jock. I have no idea what he's talking.
So it was who he was afraid to ask the help from, and because he didn't want to do that, he let cities burn. He enabled. He really, the whole Rittenhouse thing, which is a national joke, and an embarrassment. Happened under his watch, and really happened because his lack of action, because of his catering to the far left. If he cared about the people, right, then he would have said, okay, well, it's time to call in National Guard because the people who are here rioting, not protesting, rioting. Have gone way over the line, and it's about time that I did something as governor to protect it. But he refused to do that. pointing himself out as a tool of the far left wing of his party. So
Yeah. You know,
that's who he
Jeff,
is.
yeah, absolutely. It's really bizarre because this whole sort of concept of being tough on crime or not wanting to be accused of being soft on crime, you know, the tough on crime has been going on. I think that term was coined as far back as Nixon in the late 60s.
Yes, I think so.
And,
I think I
and
can remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like excuse me, America, but where has tough on crime got you? You know, you've got so many people in prison. You've got so much, corruption being exposed. It's like, you know, being tough on crime. Is it really being draconian? Is that really the way forward? Anyway, I've got a couple of articles that I'm going to cover in the not too distant future about that. Because as I say, it's for me. It's the disappointment is that I don't see Americans as bad people at all. As I was saying to you, I went to Manitowoc, Wisconsin. The place is beautiful. The people that you meet, lovely people, and yet you realise that there's such kind of corruption and injustice going on. Anyway, enough of me.
I think, Paul, you hit on a great point, right? Because one of the things that I like to talk about when I go on people's channels is the fact that there has been a terrible injustice done here, right? Mm-hmm. And when we look at the recent ruling by the Court of Appeals, mm-hmm. the thing that hits the hardest in that judgment is the procedural bar, right?
Yeah.
And the procedural bar happened essentially because Kathleen dismissed the pro se appeal, right? And the state's argument is, well, when she dismissed that, you lost the right to talk about all of these things. And the fact of the matter is that it's not that all these things aren't good points. It's that they've thrown this artificial barrier in there called the procedural bar. So it's not about fundamental fairness at all. Right. No. It's about some, thank God I'm not a lawyer. Right? I think you can actually see this better if you're not a lawyer, because if you talk to a lawyer about it, well, that's perfectly legal. That's the way the legal system works. Well, if you don't like how the legal system works, you have to do something about it. Right. And all we can do is, we can peacefully, as we're doing right now, talk and protest and make people aware and ask yourself, is this the justice system? So, my point is, if you're going to get tough on crime, which okay, I can see why people don't want to be sitting peacefully in their homes and have people breaking into their. I get that, but you have to have, if you're going to do that, you have to have sort of a corresponding. Let's also get tough on injustice and corruption, because there's a symbiosis there. You can't have one without the other, and there's no sign at all of that latter thing emerging. As a matter of fact, it just seems to be getting worse. With mini Pol Pot tyrants popping up all over the place, like Tom Kaczorek, for example.
Sure. I mean, here's maybe a tricky question, but do we need Brendan being released to help Stephen released more or less than we need Stephen released to help Brendan? In other words, which one? Because I get the sense that one of the reasons why the Seventh Circuit didn't want to give Brendan his habeas corpus, writ of certiorari, was because the Stephen Avery case is still ongoing. I got the sense that and until Steve is sorted out, that unfortunately Brendan is just going to have to sit there. Did you get that at all?
Well, I guess, not being a legal scholar,
sure,
more like, legal armchair quarterback is better description of me. I find it to be quite the opposite. I think that, because Brendan's case is really not based on evidence, but rather based on his own words, that Brendan's only chance is if something happens to Stephen. I do think Brendan might have a chance if he were to say, okay, I'm ready to give my confession. You recall if it was 6 months ago maybe that Ken Kratz tweeted that he thought that Brendan Dassey's sentence deserved to be commuted.
Yes.
Part of that is going to be part of the price of that is going to be a full confession, right? So that, I mean, the state would love to have that. Because that would make a lot of things go away, right? That would, but I don't think Brendan's going to do that. But so I think for the reasons of the reasons of the lack of evidence that was actually especially the forensic evidence. There was zero forensic evidence against Brendan Dassey, and the confession itself is used as an example of how not to employ various interrogation techniques, especially on learning disabled teenagers. So that's the great example. They're using that as an example of how not to do it, but all of a sudden,
hopefully more and more states. Yeah, hopefully more and more states will adopt what I've started calling, the Dassey Bill, which is that you cannot bluff. Which even that word it irritates me, because bluff sounds like almost joking, as if it's it's
a poker game.
Yeah, it's just a game, but it's serious, isn't it?
The word is euphemism, right? That's the word. When there's something that you really want to say, but you use this word that just doesn't sound quite as harsh, that's a euphemism.
Yes,
Bluff
exactly.
is a euphemism for the word lie, right?
Yes,
you
exactly.
can't lie. It's not about bluffing. It's about lying. Oh, we have this. We know. Like you see it in the interrogation, even of on November 9th, right?
Yeah.
Well, how did her blood get in your trailer?
Yes.
They never found her blood in her trailer. They didn't have the DNA evidence back yet, even to even know that the bones that they found in the fire pit, or adjacent to the fire pit, I should say, belong to anybody, right? They didn't know that. So they just friggin' lie through their teeth. That shouldn't be allowed, right? They shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Well, it's something that obviously is being dealt with, and it was Jerry that outside the Seventh Court said, America is the only English-speaking country in the world where interrogators are allowed to mislead, in people during interrogations. And I mean, let's face it, most people, if they're told a lie by a police, they're going to, and they're being told, we already know what's happened, then you would just get up and say, well, fine. You go and investigate what happened. And if you already know, why am I here? But obviously Brendan couldn't do that. The next question would be, and this again is something that kind of bugs me, is the fact that we've got it's okay. There's a bee that the dogs are fascinated by. Anyway, I'll just ignore them.
My dogs love the bumblebees. For some reason, they're the most hated things on earth. They chase them. They try and chase them away. They're not going to come back.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, we know that Steve and Brendan were prosecuted in two separate trials. But one of the things I find quite bizarre is the fact that Steve and Brendan were prosecuted in two separate trials by the same attorneys, and yet, as far as their defence is concerned, they have to have two separate defence teams. And it's very odd. Yeah. It's often crossed my mind: are the two lots of attorneys, Steve Drizzen, Laura Nyrider, and Kathleen Zellner, are they sort of, working really well as a team together, or is it very much a sort of us and them? We have that, and it's so interesting where Kathleen Zellner talks about Laura Nyrider in front of the Seventh Circuit, David Hamilton, saying about how many shell casings were found in the garage, and at that point, and why do we need two suspects? And Zellner says exactly what she would have said. But that opportunity was missed, wasn't it? And I remember listening to it. I think I've listened to it live and thinking, come on, Laura, you're being far too polite. Just tell it as it is. But I don't know what
was the key one, wasn't that? So to me, you hit. Being knowledgeable about the case is not surprising, but the key thing there is, why did they need a second suspect?
Yeah.
And the answer is quite obvious, isn't it? Well, they needed Brendan's confession so they could find out MFL.
Yeah.
They needed to coerce a confession. Tom Fassbender tells Brendan during the interrogation, when Brendan says they shot her outside, as one of his first of 1,000 options they gave him.
Yeah.
You're lying, Brendan. Nobody has asked Tom Fassbender, to my knowledge, about what evidence they had to claim that a lie. But they liked it a lot better when they said that she was shot in the garage, because there being 6 inches of snow on the ground would have made it very difficult to come up with item FL, wouldn't it? And they needed something because they didn't have anything. The locals in Manitowoc, those good people that you were talking about. I'm refreshed by going through the documentary with Jeff Jones and Kelly and Dr. Silkman. Yep. Just how the people of Manitowoc reacted to the original arrest with the flimsy amount of evidence that they had. They were like, "Oh, they're setting him up. They're setting him up." But after Brendan's coerced confession, the dominoes started to fall, right, in the state's favor. As Ken Kratz said, it was the game changer. But you see, if you listen to the jail calls, even people who are very supportive of Stephen take a different tone with him on the calls. Like people like Rolly Johnson, right, the guy who actually owned the trailer. Yeah, he really didn't think Stephen was innocent anymore after Brendan's confession. People turned on Stephen. The whole specter of the 1985 case completely vanishes after Brendan. It gives the state a chance to come up with item FL, to come up with the hood latch swab after they're the ones suggested that he went into the hood in the first place. Miraculously, the hood latch swabs produced this massive amount of DNA. Which you'd have to lick it to be able to, to be able to leave that much DNA. So yeah, that's why they needed that. And let's not forget the property bond either, right? The property bond was coming due. It was actually, I think, coming due within the next week. He was going to have a hearing, and there had been somebody recently released, someone who was also accused of murder, who put up a property bond and was released. According to Jerry, according to Dean Strang, Stephen relayed to Dolores, he didn't see any reason why the judge wouldn't accept it. But all of a sudden, we have Brendan confessing, we have 3 new charges added, and because of the additional dangerousness of Stephen, because of these 3 new charges, the bail is up from $500,000 to $750,000. It was just a sort of a masterful stroke that Brendan confesses, and all these things come into play that are just wonderful boons for the state. That's why they needed Brendan Dassey. There's all those reasons.
Yeah. I mean,
I couldn't do any of those.
Yes, as I say. So yeah, carry on, Jeff.
I was going to say the answer to your question that you asked is a good question, and it deserves an answer, which is. How do I feel that the legal teams are acting together? It doesn't seem to me. Maybe it's different for you, but I don't see them really acting together at all. But maybe that's just because I live in Massachusetts and they're somewhere else. I mean, maybe they have some secret alliance, and they call and they share things that they might know or tips that they may have gotten. But other than that, Laura Nyrider, she's busy. I get that. She's very busy. With the Innocence Project, and Kathleen's got her things. Yes. She's put a lot of her own money into it. Laura's not really putting her money into it so much as she is her time. So yeah, I don't see it. If it is happening, I'd be heartened a little bit knowing about it, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you think about it, you've touched on a very good point there. Kathleen Zellner has put all this money behind the case, but let's not kid ourselves. For each wrongful conviction lawsuit, her commission of the amount given to these wrongfully accused is, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, she gets 33%. So if Ryan Ferguson settles for 11 million, she gets 33% of that. If Steve settles for 100 million or 200 million, she's going to get 30. She had 5 multi-million-dollar lawsuits in the space of a year.
Well,
You
I'm
know,
not going to begrudge Kathleen her money.
exactly. What I find bizarre though is that if it seems to me that if a lawyer wants to make a lot of money, you go into the post-conviction stage of trying to do lawsuits to get your clients out.
Well, and it's the thing is too. I think it's if you go into Linda's Discord channel, I think she's got a statistic there. If I get it wrong, I apologize. Maybe she can correct it in the comments if she's watching. That the number of total years that people who have been accused of murder and exonerated in DNA, if you add all those years up, that all those people who have been served, it's something like 5,000 years.
Yes.
Who've been convicted of murder, and maybe some of them maybe were on death row and have been since exonerated because of reliably processed DNA evidence, not by Sherry Culhane, but by real people. That is just in the so yeah, I think you're right. I think Kathleen Zellner, at least the way in the way that she puts it is, she took on in her early years this case of a serial killer who was guilty, and she really didn't like being subject to that type. And she said, I'm only going to work for people that I think are innocent. So
yes,
she's standing by her convictions, and she's happen to make a good living off of it because she's good at it. More power to her. To me, she's a hero in my book, even though I do admit that she did mess up by dismissing the.
Hopefully Jeff's still there. Just froze for a moment, or was it me? No, I can hear you. I can hear you there. That's fine. Yeah. No, it was just something that I did notice when I was in Australia was the fact that the Stephen and Laura, they very rarely mention Steve or Kathleen Zellner. I think there was in Sydney, I think Kathleen Zellner was mentioned once, and it was by David Rudolph. Steve wasn't mentioned at all. It was slightly better over in Melbourne, but I remember thinking at the time, I'm getting a sense of there's like two camps here. I don't know. Did you ever? Bizarrely, when I first started following the case, there was even one or two people who were pro Brendan but against Steve.
That Stephen may have done it without. I don't see how. I don't see how that's possible. Actually, because essentially, yet another thing that I forgot to mention in my Brendan rant earlier is that Brendan was Stephen's alibi, right? Yes. They come back and both Scott Tadich and Barb, say that Stephen was standing. He doesn't recognize which one of Barb's sons it was standing by the fire. We know that it was Brendan now. But if it's not, to me, it's not possible that that Stephen is guilty and Brendan is innocent. I just don't see the circumstances lining up based on what happened.
Exactly.
So I don't see that.
Sure. So to me, this whole business of the fact that you've got the, as I say, the two separate cases that you take forward, but two separate lawyers. To me, it smacks a little bit of like divide and conquer. If you can divide the opponent, then you've got a better chance of succeeding. And it just seems to me somewhat unfair, as I say, that you've got the state that they had the same prosecution team for both trials, presented two different scenarios, and yet the defense is having to try and do it the way they're doing it. I
think that's the most upsetting part. Is the two different narratives, right? It doesn't make sense to me that you should be allowed to prosecute two people for the same crime under two different narratives. So I think it's a shame. Again, Brendan being sort of learning disabled and so impressionable. Dean and Jerry could have called him if they wanted to the stand. I think they were afraid to do it. just because they didn't know what he was going to say. I mean, he's just so impressionable and such a wild card. Obviously being in custody for so long, I wouldn't have put it past the Manitowoc police or to sort of corral him in a jail cell and get him to confess again, the day before he was supposed to testify. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. You've touched on something there as well that sort of crossed my mind. I'm going through at the moment, looking at the various suspects, and there was that moment in Brendan's trial where he says, a girl murdered in this way. Where did you get all this detail from if you made it up? And it's like, I'm thinking, if only Brendan had said, "Oh, I got it off my older brother's computer." that would have been absolutely brilliant, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh boy. Am I the only one left here? Maybe we can pause, but yeah, I think that Dr. Silkman has done some great videos on the Kiss the Girls, which may have even been played, he may have even watched at the Fox Hills.
Hi there.
Hello. You left me alone on your show. I could have told you.
Sorry, yeah. It was just really bizarre. It just went all wonky. I was losing a load of vision. I've not got you in vision, but I can hear you now. But yeah, I just quickly logged back in again. So yeah, welcome to the studio. Just help you. Just help you.
On, Paul.
just help yourself to the beer and the whiskey. I'm only on coffee as well at the moment, actually.
Yeah, so later on, I think maybe I'm going to have myself a Moscow Mule tonight. But
good idea. Good idea.
So you were asking about Brendan, what he said. Wouldn't it be great if he had said that? But he did. I think he unfortunately for Brendan, he probably veered towards the truth.
Yes.
And he did have to read for his school, that book called Kiss the Girls. Now, if he's anything like I was when I was in school, and there was a movie that you could watch instead of reading the book, I would have done that. I think Dr. Silkman has done some great work in comparing the things that Brendan said to the things that happened in that movie. What did you do to her head?
Yes.
We cut her hair. It happens in the movie, right?
Yep.
What else? We don't mean that. Punched her in the head. We don't mean that. So I think he probably did indeed get those things from that movie. It wasn't to me. If I was a jurist, I'm not sure that digging into the case and knowing Brendan a little bit, I think that's extremely convincing. Sitting there in the jury box trying to put yourself aside from that, I'm not sure how convincing that would have been to me. But I'm not sure what much else he had. So.
Yep. It's absolutely brilliant, the timing of this. Steve has commented because that's I was going to ask you. Have you come across anything new when you've been looking at the cell tower stuff? I remember I had a chat with a whole load of you from Foul Play, the Adelaide Crows fan invited me on for a chat with you all, and I'm delighted. I'm delighted that his team are doing well, because there's nothing worse than a grumpy Dr. Silkman, is there?
Yeah, I wish I had, Paul. It's actually one of the things that first attracted me to the case. The first time I started to watch Making a Murder, and I didn't quite realize that I had put on season 2 first, and Kathleen Zellner is actually talking about the phones, and that very much intrigued me, because I do have some expertise in that area. The sad part about that is that any sort of recorded, what you might call cellular forensic information, if you were in that business today, is long gone. And that even the phone service that Teresa had was from Singular Wireless. Before the trial even started, Singular Wireless was acquired by AT&T Wireless. And it was actually, that was a fishy deal in and of itself. I'm not saying it definitely did not have anything to do with this case, but
Sure.
actually AT&T Wireless sold its cellular to Singular, making Singular the biggest wireless in the company. And then
Yeah.
AT&T went and procured that, and it became AT&T Wireless again. So I don't know how that managed to happen, but that reacquisition of Singular by AT&T sort of essentially deleted many of the records, and that's why there's some. When Kathleen Zellner, asked for Teresa's, phone records for a year, those have been translated from one database to another. So it's not surprising that there's inconsistencies in the time and the calls that are there versus the calls that are. You'd think it'd be more, a little bit more consistent than it is, but that information is gone. To me, the biggest cell phone mystery remains: how did Teresa's phone ping off the Whitelaw Tower when there were so many other towers that were closer to the Avery salvage yard? That is yet to be explained. It's something that could have been investigated at the time a little bit better, even by literally taking a phone, and driving it around. But that's just not something that was done. In our conversations that we're having with Jeff Jones, I think we said in this upcoming episode that's going to be aired on Monday. We talk about that, and we say that probably the two biggest lapses in expertise that we have wished that Dean and Jerry had hired were the phones and the bones.
Yes. Yeah,
so I do believe there was a lot that could have been had. They could have made some hay on that. Maybe it improved Stephen Gill. I don't know, but certainly there's a lot of analysis that could have been done. There's a lot of information on those towers that we don't have. It's a shame. And Kathleen Zellner makes a gross error too in NAM 2, when she says how far the Whitelaw Tower is from the Avery salvage yard. She sort of measured the road distance as opposed to this as the crow flies distances.
Sure.
But that still, there's still a lot of towers that are closer to Avery's than that Whitelaw Tower. So,
indeed, yeah. It's do you know what? It's 36 minutes already, and it seems like 2 minutes that we've been chatting.
That's what happens when you're talking with friends. You just time goes.
It does indeed. I suppose if the dude's big thing was the control question, one of the things that I tend to rabbit on about more than anything else are my concerns with Mike Holbach and the things that he said. And you know what? After 6 years, I still don't know what he actually meant by the grieving process could last days. Because my problem is that, first of all, it's relatives who are the last ones to accept that anything bad has come of their loved ones. But
it's a thing called hope, right? You want to have hope.
Yeah. but if he knows then that Teresa has met her demise, the fact that the grieving could last days, it just. I just don't.
I don't even know what that means.
No.
So yeah. I appreciate you. I know you're going through the suspects. I'm very much enjoying your series on the suspects. I was actually talking with Jeff Jones about going and talking about the German on a live.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was going to be one of your suspects. I'm not sure if you're going to be around. It's kind of late for you. I'd love to have you on to talk about. There's a limited number of topics that we can talk about, but would love to have you on. We were thinking of maybe doing some of the outside suspects. We give Tom Pierce a bit of a roasting on Monday.
Yeah.
But to get back to your point, which is great, maybe we can talk about coming on in a little bit. I saw your last video. Maybe it wasn't your last, but a recent video that you published where you do talk about you do address the question as to whether she's still alive or not. I think it's very brave of you to do that, because people just. They get violent, and when for some reason. But I think it's something that you have to consider, even if it is to do enough work on it to dismiss it. I think Dr. Silkman's pretty convinced that those those were her bones. But the amazing boons that befell the Hallback family are something that that people look at and say, well, and those things that happened like a year before she ever disappeared. So if that's true, right? If those boons happened to her, I mean, that just tells you that they were planning this for a year.
Oh yeah.
Right? But I don't know that it's true. I'm not saying that it's true. And I also don't believe that it's not the right thing to do to terrorize this poor woman in Canada, Teresa St. John Crockett, I think her name is.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and leave her be. But she does bear some slight resemblance, and she does have her business name Photography by Teresa.
Yeah,
which is oh my God, and I guess suppose this is one of those doppelganger moments, right?
Yes, yeah.
And not necessarily physical. I don't mean. I sort of mean other things.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, looking at the other suspects. Obviously, going back to something you said earlier, the problem with the whole investigation was the fact that the focus was on Steve almost straight from the start, and that's because they wanted it that way. And Pete Betts makes a really good point. We don't hear enough of him, I don't feel, in the first documentary. But he says, look, it's Kratz. It's Kratz pulling the shots. Kratz is telling you where to go, what to look at. Clearly, as the district attorney, the prosecuting attorney, he's trying to do his utmost to help get Thomas Koshurik and the Manitowoc DA's office off the hook on this, isn't he?
Paul, it's too much of a miracle for me,
isn't it? Yeah.
That Teresa Hallback went missing in time for Stephen to get arrested the day before Tom Kossurik's deposition. This case all goes back to 1985, and that's why I believe it's an absolute 100% setup. There's no way in my mind that Stephen Avery would commit this crime, given where he was in his life, given the state of his case. I just don't. That it's just not believable to me that he is that much of a monster that he could have done this at that time. It's just not believable. Which is, I believe, it's 100% setup. It all goes back to 1985. And we're the witness of at least two conspiracies, maybe even three, right? One of the conspiracies is the 1985 case itself, right? That he obviously couldn't do it, and it's not just Stephen sat through a trial where he got totally railroaded. Then, right? It was obvious, all those eyewitnesses, and then there was but everybody conspired to put Stephen in, including Kossurik and Vogel, and then there was the Brown County call, right? Peter said, "We got the right guy. Put that away." Right. That's another conspiracy. Yes. And the third one being the Peg whitewash. Right. They conspire. Right. If you look at what happened, right. Jennifer Nashville, Amy Lehman and Deb Strauss had gone out. Yes. They'd done the interviews. They had created a report. Jennifer Nashville actually had a chapter in there on Dennis Vogel. That the next person up from her who edited the document, we don't need that. And we're gonna frame this way. And that person was that man was a person by the name of Tom Fallon, right? So the same names keep on popping up, and that in and of itself is also a conspiracy to shift the blame, because 1985 was obviously a setup, obviously a gross miscarriage of justice. But what did? They conspired to whitewash it. We have watched so far in this case 3 conspiracies. Mm-hmm. Right, and the guilt isn't going to tell me, conspiracies don't happen. I just watched 3 of them. Yeah, it happened right in front of my face, and you're going to tell me there wasn't a conspiracy here? So I think the great mystery here is, how did Teresa Hallback die? And anything else is explainable through planting. How that I would like to know, or maybe, as you say, is she still dead? I'm not going to dismiss any possibility that any thinking person is going to put before me that's not my style.
Yeah, the fact is that coincidences, as I say, do happen, but the chances of Ryan killing Teresa because he's jealous, and it just so happened to be that convenient for the show's department. No, I don't. I don't get that. But what I do get is that Ryan has somehow been involved in this whole setup. Yes, but we talk about the whole setup. It didn't take many people to to, as the dude would often say, Mark Oddy, a friend down in Yorkshire, all compasses point north. So all you need is somebody saying, like we hear, we found the vehicle. Is Stephen Avery in custody yet?
Jacobs. Yep. It's
Yeah.
just It's obvious, right? It's just so
Yeah.
obvious. They don't even bother trying to hide it, and they had no idea. And you know what? The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, that they really pulled it off. Had it not been for these two filmmakers, Laura Riccardi, although this 1985 case is very interesting, and they were there for that, and all of a sudden this murder. Had it not been for them. Yeah. And the documentary, they would have completely got away scot-free with all their shenanigans, right? So they did get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what's most sad about this is that, and I'm kind of touching on this as I'm going through the whole sleazy business with Ken Kratz, and it gets very messy for him. And I don't have any sympathy for him shooting himself in the foot like this, but you see how vicious this whole civil suit against him becomes, and you multiply that by the amount that Kasurik was clearly worried about, the consequences of being deposed. And the civil suit, he's checking insurances and finding out, no, we don't cover you for framing. Surprise, surprise. But you then realise that the stakes were so high that they were prepared to put the Manitou County Sheriff's Department assassination unit and push the button and get somebody to go out and kill a 25-year-old woman to save their faces. But it's just. It's really savage. It's just sad that these sort of things could actually happen. But me, I'm sure of it.
Isn't it shocking? There's sort of a duality here. Right? So first, isn't it shocking that Peterson said, if we had that big of a problem with Avery, we would have just, we could have just killed him ourselves.
Yeah.
That would have been easy. And so what does that tell? That kind of tells you that that's something that's on their mind. Right? That's something that's doable, right? So
yes.
To me, I don't tend to utter unthinkable things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially when I'm trying to be serious. Maybe when I'm doing a joke, but certainly not. I wouldn't say it on an interview on Dr. Phil. It would have been easier to kill him. That would say that that's something in the realm of possibility, kind of like Jean Couché, right? Oh, is DNA, can DNA be planted? Yes. Was it in this case? I don't know, right? Maybe when you go through your, so again, we got to talk about what's going on with Jeff Jones and the suspects, but certainly you have to put the cops on that list.
Yes, well, I mean. Did they actually do the dirty deed themselves? I think one thing I do like about America is, do they not in most states, they don't only hold the person accountable that actually fired the bullet, shall we say, but also if you were involved in that plan to murder somebody, or even if you were just there and you did nothing to help stop somebody from being murdered, all three of you could be charged with first-degree murder.
I believe that's the case.
Yeah. It's by association. Do I think that the sheriff's department had to, send out Lincoln Colburn to kill Teresa? No, I don't think so. I think we know that because of the networks, that Tom Kasurik is more than capable of saying, "I need you to do something for me, and I need this done." And you go get somebody to do it for me, and I don't care who, but you need to do it.
I mean, you and I have been around long enough to probably go down all the rabbit holes that there are to go down. So have you ever gone down the rabbit hole of, did the cops unleash Gregory Allen on Penny Bernstein?
Yeah.
At that time and at that place.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of knowing it was going to be Stephen that they rounded up. I mean, I don't know that to be true, and that's a terrible thing to even conceive of. But that the sad part is there's something believable about it, right? That's the reason why it doesn't die in the vine, because there's something believable about it.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I'm not saying that that's what happens, but it's just an awful coincidence.
Well, It is. It's the fact that I think it was the police department that were actually watching him, weren't they? They were
Correct.
keeping a watch on him. But then you hear that Dave Pagotka was actually near that beach when the attack happened, and he's talking about all these agents swarming everywhere, and he's being ushered away, and he
wanted to go up into the berm and look, and they wouldn't let him. I mean, that's fishy. It's fishy. I agree. That's part of the things that keeps these conspiracy. If you want conspiracy theories to go away, you open up the books, right? You say here, you shine the light, but they are not shining the light on anything in Manitowoc. That they are letting the cockroaches run amok in Manitowoc, and what happens? Say if you're not trying to hide, people who don't have anything to hide, can keep on hiding things, right? And that's all they're doing is hiding this and that. It speaks of something being up, right? Well, why can't we listen to Bobby Dassey's interview?
Yes.
On November 9th. Why is that locked up?
Yeah.
Why is that sealed?
Well, it's. I mean, for me, as I say, sadly, I think that as far as Brendan's chance of freedom, I think that's going to be more on the back of movement in Steve's case. Although, I mean, obviously, look, it would be great if they'd have if Brendan had prevailed at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, because he would be free. And I don't know how
he did, and then he
lost the on back. Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah,
but it was like I don't know how much that would have affected Steve, other than the fact that it would be great to have Brendan out, and it was something that you could then say, well, this whole conviction of Steve was based largely on the media, as you said yourself earlier. They had this confession which just changed everything, changed the whole ball game. So I don't know which is going to happen first. I still hold out a little bit of hope, and that would be that if Tony Evers loses the gubernatorial, which I believe is in November, but he doesn't actually hand over the office until, I believe, the beginning of January.
Correct. The end of January, probably.
Yeah, that he decides, sod this, I am going to do the right thing. Just in this, I am going to do something about this case. I'm going to release Brendan because I've got the power to do it. It's the least I can do, given this situation. Because I mean,
I would love it if that happens.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if he even held up the tweet of Mr. Kratz to say, hey, look, even the prosecutor said that, I just fear that they would have a stipulation on that, on that release that says, well, okay, Brendan, you can walk as long as you admit say you're sorry for what you did and give a full and accurate confession, then you can go. I just can't. They're just too scummy to do sort of the right thing, and let it be. They're going to want to extract their pound of flesh out of him.
Yeah, or some sort of Alford plea, or something along the lines like Sean Ellis in Trial 4, where they say, well, we're letting him go, but we still feel that he's involved in some of this, but. I don't know. I think if it's a clemency, Evers does have that power, and if unless he's planning on running it 4 years after that, but I suppose my final point would be that you've got, on the one hand, you've got this sort of tough on crime, and Evers wanting to be seen as not being soft on crime, so therefore maybe the thing you've got to really crack in this is to get support from both sides politically to getting Brendan released and still. I think Stephen Law have the whole sort of. They went down the federal route with Duffin and then the Seventh Circuit, but they've yet to appeal to the Court of Appeals. Now, obviously, we've seen that Stephen hasn't had much joy in that sense. But he would be starting from new.
I think that Brendan's problem is that I'm not sure what exactly what basis he has to appeal to the Court of Appeals, right? I mean, so the typical nature of the appeal is of the appeal process is there was something flawed about my trial.
Yes.
Right. In Stephen's case, several things. Right. I should have been allowed my constitutional rights were violated when I wasn't allowed to name a Denny suspect. Right. Yeah. The prosecution withheld evidence. That something was flawed about my trial is the grounds for my appeal. And since they really didn't utilize any evidence against Brendan,
yes,
that except for his confession. They really don't have a mechanism to invoke the fact that his trial was flawed, even though the outcome is flawed and the confession was coerced. Essentially, that was the basis of the federal appeal that the confession shouldn't have been admitted because of its flawed nature. But I mean, here's where you really need a lawyer, right? But I don't know that there is a what he can name that was flawed about his trial, since they didn't use any. I really need to go back and watch the details of Brendan's trial again, or maybe I know they've read it. Dr. Silkman and company have read it on Paul Play, but I'm going to have to listen to all the details again. I know people have brought up things like, for example, since it was two separate trials. Since Sherry Culhane washed all the DNA off and used it in Stephen's trial, Brendan didn't have a chance to do any corroborating study on it, and is that a violation of it? But if they didn't use that piece of evidence in his trial, then again, there's no leg to stand on. So I feel for Brendan, I really do.
What I would say though, that gives me a slight cause for encouragement, is that clearly the poster campaign, the billboard campaign, the fact that they've put these messages on the bus, they're clearly getting through to somebody, aren't they? When you had this wall of silence, it's like, are we even getting anywhere? The fact that they've come out and said, as if to say, please stop doing this. You're making it awkward for us. So I would say hats off to the Hard and Tracy Keogh and the others. For their efforts in trying to get it in front of Tony Evers, so it's something that's constantly in the back. I mean, every time he's driving behind a bus, he's gonna see it, isn't he?
He is, and just like Ken Kratz did on March 1st. He tried this case in the court of public opinion to to me, he went over the line of prosecutorial misconduct. But the court of public opinion is extremely influential, right? And Mark and Tracy, hats off, like Paul said, keep it alive because things are, the country's going to hell in a handbasket, and what we need is for good people not to look away when this kind of crap happens, and just to shout it from the rooftops. And I think that's a good example what they're doing right now of just shouting his innocence from the rooftop. People see that billboard, they say, "Well, who the heck is Brendan Dassey?"
Yes,
and they Google him and he was the Making a Murderer, and I haven't seen that. And then they go watch and like, oh my God, what a screw job this kid got.
Yes.
So it hopefully gets to the point where the political fallout of releasing him because people realize, what a injustice was done to him, and say, you know what, even if he did take the state's route, he would have been out by now.
If he'd have taken Mike Holbach's advice, sentencing, at sentencing, Mike Holbach, he should have taken the deal.
Yeah,
but honestly, you think that guy murdered, did all that stuff to your sister, but you're happy to see him released? What, after 10, 15 years? Was that deal 15 years? Nah, come on.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct.
Yep. I can't find it here, but I've got a photograph. It was something that somebody sent me, and it's a side by side of what Ken Kratz said in, I think it was like November when he first took over the job, which was, we're not going to try this case in the media. And then, as you say, when it gets to March 1st, March 2nd, and it's, it's just hypocritical, isn't it? It's so false.
He'll say anything.
Yeah.
He was a go-getter from career oriented from the beginning. After MAM, he joined all these boards of all these do-gooder organizations, and was running for I think for the House of Representatives, and that's really when it all came out, right? He did.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It was sort of politics that did him in, and he people like that aspire. Ken never met a camera he didn't like. Right during the trial, and he wanted to use that fame that he acquired in the media to catapult his political career, and look what happened to him. Right?
Yeah.
Oops, Ken.
Yeah.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Exactly, and it's like Ryan Foley was the guy that did you send all these messages? And Ken Kratz sort of quite rightly said, where did you get all this stuff from? How did you get it? Clearly, somebody, as you say, politically, could see that Ken Kratz was going up and up and up in the world, and it was time to pull the plug on him. But that's and maybe that isn't the ethical thing to do. But thank goodness they did stop him. Can you imagine what it would be like if he I can well imagine Ken Kratz being the sort of person that I think it was a member of government called Alan Lass that was the one that promoted the idea in between Steve's arrest and the trial that if you're found guilty of murder based on DNA evidence, to bring back the death sentence. They would have quite happily have killed Steve by now, wouldn't they?
I think they would have, I'm not 100% sure that you could have done that, and this ex post facto laws. Maybe it was before. I don't know, but boy, that would have been a stretch. But again, one thing that the dude convinced me of, and this is a good thing in my life. I was a supporter prior to my involvement in this case. I was a supporter of the death penalty. Wow. And if there's any one person that convinced me of the error of that, of that way of thinking, it was the dude. Just this case alone is enough. And what I've learned in my research, with the Innocence Project and whatnot, I apologize for my former stance on the death penalty. But there's no justice in the death penalty. It doesn't make any sense. 5,000 years of people on death row or people of being convicted of murder, all of a sudden exonerated because of DNA evidence. But there's no such thing as beyond a shadow of a doubt. No such thing.
You're absolutely right. I mean, for me, I've kind of swayed one way or the other quite a bit. I would say here in the UK, it was the fact that there were cases being discovered where people had been executed when, either there hadn't been a crime committed at all because the person was still alive and living somewhere else, or, just these various problems with the system. I mean, hell, I've mentioned it before, Jeddah Justice. Down in Jedburgh back in the 1700s, they caught these guys that were stealing sheep. They took them to jail and hung them on the Thursday, and it was the following week when the sheriff arrived in town and they had the trial. It's a famous case. It's called Jeddah Justice. But yes, the whole death sentence thing. It's
a bit much.
It is.
We don't live in a time. I can see that there may have been a time when existence was so difficult that you just did not have the resources to have the people that were in prison treated humanely, because it just there wasn't enough money, there wasn't enough place. People didn't want to do the work because it was hard enough to keep your own families sustained. That time is not today. right? We have the ability to attempt to reform people. We have the ability to, take those people who are too much of a, who are never going to reform and sort of, keep them away and treat them humanely. And give them that chance for exoneration if they've been wrongfully convicted. But just we are on the wrong path in a lot of different pursuits that we're engaging in. Let's put it that way, as a country.
I greatly admire a lawyer called Brian Stevenson, who's in that film Just Mercy, and I've seen him interviewed. I think it's on do a presentation on a thing called, is it Tech Talks or TED Talks?
TED Talks, yeah.
TED Talks,
I think that was from Ted Turner. Ted Turner is
right.
I think the TED is from Ted Turner, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure, and that was the one that really. I was very impressed with what he was saying when he talks about the fact that somebody's committed murder, but that's not all they are. There's a lot more to that person than just that person that on that one moment did that, and it's for me the bottom line is that you found somebody guilty of murder, which is the worst crime you can commit. So you're going to murder them? Where's the? I don't see the. That for me is the big problem. If you're saying that person's guilty of murder because they've murdered somebody, and then you're going to then state-sponsored murder, it's really just as bad for me. So yeah, it's
the more you think about it, all right, and that's what you have to do in order to support it like I did. You really have to not think about what you're doing, right? And the more you think about it and internalize it, I can't support this.
Yeah,
I wish I could, but I can't. And people always come at you with things like, well, suppose it was your wife or your daughter or your mother or something like that. And my answer to that is, well, if it was mine, then I hope that I have the opportunity to grab a rifle and blow their head off if I could see them do it. And at the same time, I hope that my friends would come around me and stop me from doing it if they saw that that's what I was positioned to do. And so I think, to me, that says that, the emotions that happen are justified, but cooler heads need to prevail and just stop this second injustice from happening. Yeah. And the emotions of the family victims are not going to get abated. But you know what? There's also not a real sense of closure that's going to happen. I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm aware of any, sort of family victim that's come back. I really feel good about what just happened after an execution. Maybe that there's some sad sense of closure, that they talk about, but I don't see any happiness on these people's faces. So I don't see the point.
Yeah, one of the things that I always remember was all those people lining the freeway when Ted Bundy was being executed and then cheering. And it's like, you've just killed somebody that was a great source of pointing out problems and, not a nice person. But then when you're using him to your advantage and then to destroy all that. Anyway, a final comment. We've got somebody here that's turning a whole load of porkers. Linda, what on earth are you on about? What on earth are you on about? You are a cheese, yeah.
I have to 60. Come on. I would love to. I've just been very busy, and I want to come on your show. I know you asked me. I'm dying to do it, but work is killing me first. And I thank you for being in the audience. You know that you're one of my faves.
She's a terror. She is, honestly.
She is a supporter. She is.
Oh yes. Yeah. Mind you, she's not quite as loopy as her sidekick Wanda, but that's another story altogether.
I'm not going down that road at all.
No, I'm not going to go. Listen, Jeff, I hope I've not kept you too long and that this has been a not too bad start of the day for you. What's on for the rest of the day, pal?
Well, I actually, tomorrow's Mother's Day in the States, and my wife actually went down to Washington to her brother's house. Her nephew, my nephew by marriage, he's graduating from college. He did very well. So she's down there.
Yeah.
I have to get the house ready for Mother's Day. What I do is I like to go out. I spend literally a couple of $100 on flowers, and I get the house all in the yard, all decked up with the flowers for Mother's Day, and that's my Mother's Day gift to her, and keeps the yard looking nice all summer. So that's the one thing I do. And I also, for those of you who really know me, I also like to build wood things like planters and put those around. When you make planters, you need to put flowers in them. So
yes.
That's one thing that I enjoy doing is that kind of woodworking and a little bit of gardening. But hopefully, once they're done, all I need is watering. I'm not a big fan of weeding. If anyone wants to come over my house and weed, you're perfectly welcome to do that.
And so that's interesting, because it's something that I've done recently, is to make a few bits of outdoor furniture, such as benches, settee type things. But I use old pallets.
Yeah, very, very good, very sustainable.
Do you do that, or is it stuff that you get lumber?
I tend to get for outdoor furniture. Well, obviously things have changed recently, as you might be aware, with this thing called COVID. I can't. I would prefer to make outdoor furniture out of like cedar or redwood.
Yes, yeah.
Because that just doesn't rot. And I've made a lot of stuff. I'll send you a picture of the outdoor chair that I made. That we sit on. And you just can't buy that wood right now. So if, the best choice for me is pressure treated Brazilian pine for outdoor stuff. But I will occasionally get stuff off of pallets. It's a lot of work, right? You have to get the wood off the pallets. You have to denail it. If you hit a nail with your table saw blade, then you got to buy a new one or get it sharpened. And pallet wood, you can get lucky and find some oak pallets or things like that. The wood they tend to use on it is kind of cheap, so I'm always astounded by how beautiful pallet furniture comes out. I'm not at that skill level yet.
No, I must admit, I've slowly increased in the sort of stuff that I got. I've got a garage that's now sort of like a workshop where I keep all the tools, and I've gradually built up the tools. But yes, as you say, when you're using pallet wood, you've then got to make sure that the sides are straight and that the edges are square, and then you've got to either sand them or better still plane them, and you can get some quite nice surfaces out of them. But then obviously, for outdoor use, you've got to wood stain it. And I must admit, one of my favourites is to actually use epoxy resin and just add a little bit of gold paint in it, and that seems to be quite a durable way of doing it. But anyway, I'm off to the Speedway shortly. I just love the Speedway. But anyway, have a good day, and
Paul,
give my best
so much
to your mum tomorrow for Mother's Day. And
I will do that.
Absolute pleasure having you on. I look forward to next time.
Thank you.
And of course, what we're really looking forward to is a big party in Wisconsin, in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Well, just outside of Two Rivers. Just outside Michigan, we'll have a big party when Steve and Brendan are back, and that
would be great.
Yeah, and we could have something a bit stronger than coffee that day, can't we?
Check out back there. That's my real background. That's not a fake background. That's really there.
That's good.
I'll host the party.
Cheers. Excellent.
Thank you, Paul.
Excellent. Cheers, Jeff. Yeah. Well, actually, if you could just do the final Cheerios to the people. There's been quite a lot of messages left in the chat. So if you could just finish things off us, that would be great, Jeff.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Paul, for having me on. And I look forward to any time that I can talk with you or any of the supporters that are on there. It's only together that we're going to have the voice that's loud enough to correct this injustice. Thank you.
Pleasure. Excellent.